Hello, welcome to a special Sonic Lab. It may look a bit like Sonic Talk, the podcast that we do on a weekly basis, but actually this is Sonic Lab today, and we're doing it a sort of live, almost like satellite feed, direct from iZotope HQ in Boston, in the US. So they've got up early to accommodate our UK time difference. And what we're looking at is Iris 2, which, as you know, Iris 1 is a groundbreaking synthesizer based on Iris's fantastic RX technology. And I'm here with Brad, who is the product manager for Iris 2, who's there in iZotope offices. Can you hear me, Brad?
I can. Thank you, Nick. Thanks so much for having us.
You're more than welcome. So you've just moved, right? As well as everything, launching a couple of products, you've moved.
We've changed offices, and we're in a beautiful new space here in Cambridge, Mass, just across the river from Boston.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously, Iris 2 is quite a major update, right?
Yeah, we've put a lot of hard work into this. We talked to a bunch of users who had a lot of great notes for us, and we packed it full of features that we're really excited about.
So, I'm guessing, really, on release day, we're recording this just before, so we can get a little bit of extra insight. There'll be all the sort of information and videos that you're going to put up from your own basis. But just talk me through a little bit, what are the new features, the sort of the big points?
Well, Iris 1 was such a great idea and concept, and we have to thank you guys for that in large part. We might not be here talking today were it not for you guys. But it was such a great concept, and we had so many sound designers latch onto it and really embrace it as a one-of-a-kind tool that's part of their portfolio of many, many different great instruments that they use. So with Iris 2, we wanted to step it up and really make it a top-shelf instrument that is really musical and really expressive and easy to get an inspiring sound out of quickly. Because we want to reach the musicians and the composers who may not have the time to sit down and design a sound from scratch. They really want to get great sounds right away and make music with it.
So we're teasing here a little bit, aren't we? Because we do actually have a live screencast as well. So this is about by the marvels of modern technology, and I'm going to switch to that now. So perhaps you could just, it does look quite different. There's a lot more colour. It looks like there's an awful lot more modulation possibilities as well.
There is. We've totally gutted the old modulation system and put in a completely new one here, which we see down at the bottom left of the GUI. But for users who grew up on Iris 1 and loved it, all these panels can be hidden, and you can get back to that very powerful spectral filter that we have right here. And if the way you like to work with Iris is to just draw in here and move your selections around, you can do that. Or we can get in and start embracing some of this new modulation possibilities and sort of see the new layout of these parameters, which gives a whole wealth of new musical possibilities with Iris 2.
So is there a difference in the actual basic voice architecture itself? I did get a sort of brief bit of information, because previously there was fixed waveforms and then spectral waveforms. What's going on there?
Yeah, so what's going on here is this is really just a sample-based synthesizer. So everything that we do, if we were to start a new patch here, is going to come from samples. But in addition to the 11 gigs of samples that come with this, which go from sort of abstract stuff to acoustic instruments, we've also put together this bank of oscillator waveforms that come from classic analog synths. So you can quickly put together oscillator-style sound sources and make these great layered stack things where you can take an ARP, stack it with a Moog modular, add an Oberheim 8 voice, and get these incredibly stacked synth sounds out of that.
Yeah. I did get a sneak peek yesterday, late last night, and some of those waveforms do sound absolutely awesome.
Good. Well, we have Dave Spears to thank for a lot of those. His collection, of course, is incredible, and he shared a great wealth of stuff with us.
Excellent. So, so there's no limitation on what we can put in there. We've still got 4 sources,
exactly.
but there's no limitation on what they can be. They're also, that looks a lot like what we got. We're talking 5 LFOs and 5 ADSRs. Is that right?
Yeah, and those are completely independent, and I can just drag and drop one of these LFOs to apply it to one of over 100 parameters. And these are ADSR envelopes with adjustable curves that you can just sort of drag right on the interface here. and get a different curve shape and really tailor it to a sound that is exactly what you want.
Oh, that's very neat. Very neat. So one thing I haven't had a chance to look in deep, obviously, because it's only just arrived. What was going on in terms of just the basic amplitude envelope? Because I was trying to figure out how to do that. Is that are there certain things that are already pre-routed, or how does that work?
Yeah, so what we did, just to get users started quickly, if you start a new patch, envelope 5 will be attached to master amplitude. You can see it up here. And we went ahead and inverted that and set it so this gain knob still sort of functions in a traditional way. But that way you have an amplitude envelope and you can just start designing a sound quickly. You could, of course, use these other 4 envelopes to put an amplitude envelope on each individual sample if that's a way someone enjoys to design. Or you can use those for other things like filter effects or triggering effects, different things we might use an envelope for.
Right, and they can go to multiple destinations, right? There's not a limitation, it's not one for one. They can go, is there a limit to the amount of destinations they can go to?
Nope, no limits at all. You can really connect anything to anything in here and as many times as you want. Actually, while our quality assurance team tests this product, they hook LFO up to every parameter and it looks totally insane because you see everything moving. Because as part of this, I'm just going to bring up a patch here so we can look at something. We have a random button just to bring up any patch.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
But if I attach an LFO to something, we can also meter its movement as it's going through. So I'll just do a little tremolo effect here. And we can actually watch what's happening with that LFO this whole time.
Wow.
So you're metering that dot over on this gain up here. You can really see the effect of what's happening. So when you connect an LFO up to a bunch of different parameters, it looks really cool too, and it sounds great.
And I guess with the depth that you've got there, you can actually create the situation where you could have positive and negative and different amplitudes of the same LFO to multiple parameters, right?
Yeah, it's true, because you set the range actually right at the parameter just by clicking and dragging on this knob here. So you can have a negative range here or a positive range there, and every parameter can have its own unique range. But still move with the same rhythm of a common LFO.
Neat. That is neat. So the modulation possibilities are really kind of quite mind-blowing there. And as I said, I had a brief check this afternoon before we came online. And in fact, I've got Iris 2 on my desktop here. And there's a sort of, it sounds like there's a sort of beefiness to it. I mean, is that just the source waveforms, or is there something happened to the inherent sound engine in there as well?
You know, we spent a lot of time focused on sound quality with this, and we didn't want to make any compromises in there. So we did look back at the architecture of how the audio was processed by Iris 2 to make sure it was as clean a path as possible. And that means when we get these great analog oscillator waveforms coming in, that we're getting a really great representation of that. And then as we go through other parts of the signal chain, like we have this master filter section, we added some of our best filter models. We have a great Moog emulation there, a Korg emulation. So every part of the signal chain is really trying to be pristine and give you that clean, beefy sound that you need to get great synth sounds.
So that, just to be clear, the filter is a master filter. You don't filter per sample. It's on the global output, right?
Yeah, this filter that I just mentioned here with the 17 models. And then on each individual sample, we have our spectral filter, which is this thing where you can draw in your own filter shapes. So I can just take a paintbrush tool here, and I'm drawing a filter across this part of the frequency spectrum. So that's the individual filter that you have per pool. And then you have the master filter, which is modulatable and multi-mode, and we think sounds really great.
So I did also notice when I was loading patches, there's a little box that pops up that shows you also, there's like a bunch of 8 macro controls as well, which are additional routings. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. And this gets routed in the same way that you might set up one of the modulation assignments. You can just click and drag this macro and assign it to anything in here. And these macro controls come up with the patch browser. So as a user is just going through, we'll find a patch in here somewhere. you can go through and immediately sort of customize it to be very much your own using these macro controls without having to dig further into the interface. So as you're playing through these sounds, you can add some distortion in here.
Oh, almost while you're browsing patches as well. Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that way you don't have to get out of that mode of just trying to find the right sound. You can just make a few tweaks and really make these sounds completely your own.
Without having to load the whole thing and then figure it out. And then, yeah, that's neat. So I guess speed of workflow has been something that you've been working on while you've been going through, because the GUI is quite different. There's more color. It seems clearer. I mean, obviously you haven't messed with the actual spectral window too much, but the GUI side of it, particularly with the colored routings, I think makes it clearer.
Yeah, and so much of that came from our users, where we talked to them and they said, you know, we need this thing to be easy to use. We want to make music with it. We don't want to spend time learning it. And another part of that, we worked with our partners over at Groove 3 and a great teacher over there, Scotty Dugan, who put together a series of just a few videos that we're calling our 20-minute manual. So you can sort of learn all of Iris 2 in about 20 minutes with simple videos that are on YouTube.
And I noticed also, flipping through the presets, the effects do feature quite heavily. There's quite a lot of new reverb. I mean, is the effects section being kind of overhauled or enhanced?
Yeah, it was mostly an enhancement. We're fortunate to have a great portfolio of effects here and great engineers who put together, you know, anything we want when we need it. So we looked at Trash 2, which of course is our signature distortion product, and said, you know, we want to make sure we've got the best distortions out of there. So if you bring up the distortion, it may look kind of humble over here, but in there are 6 models right out of Trash 2 that are built into Iris 2. And then the upside of having these effects built right in is they save with your patch. So
right.
I know if I'm programming, lots of times I'll use plugins after my synth in my DAW. But then that's not saving with my patch. So if I go to another piece to work on, I can't get it back.
Yeah, you need to recall the channel strip and what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to give people really quality effects, the best stuff from our portfolio right here. So that, like, this chorus is kind of a spot-on Juno model. The delay, we went in and made sure there was a really pristine digital delay, as well as this sort of bucket brigade kind of analog model. And then this reverb is our plate reverb model, which we're really proud of. And all these parameters are modulatable as well. So you can get into some pretty crazy effects, or, you know, just adding an LFO to the high cut in here just to take the edge off of reverb, or have a little bit of motion. It's all possible here.
Right, that's very interesting. So I guess the key thing is, I mean, because obviously you say you've got a whole bunch of video content showing off the individual features. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about was to maybe take a listen to a few patches, and
Sure.
maybe we can just sort of take them apart or whatever. So over to you if you're going to hit me with something impress me.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. While we're here in the basses, I'm not sure which of our sound designers put this one together, but this is just a kind of simple bass sound. But if we look at the components that make this up, we have a pulse wave coming off a 2600, a saw coming off a Moog modular. Here's an Oberheim 8-voice saw. And you're able to stack all of those.
And I'm hearing this over Skype, and I'm hearing plenty of bottom end with a pair of crummy earbuds. So I can't wait till we lay the pristine audio on top of this. It's going to be very thrilling.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what people do with it, because there are so many sonic possibilities that, you know, it's really hard to lock these 3 analog synths together and make a bass sound out of them. But in here, where we can work with samples, we can make that happen. We can give people modulation control over all those things together. What's another good example of that? Let's look at a keys patch. We kept the categories very simple. We didn't want people to have to scroll through a bunch of stuff. So we just have 5 categories here: bass, keys, leads, pads, and I'll just bring up a big chord sound, find a better octave to be in.
I can see there's a lot of things dialing about there. So there's some modulation going on and what have you.
Yeah, and with all of these presets, we have all 8 of the macro controls and the mod wheel assigned and ready to go. So a user doesn't have to set up those assignments themselves. They can really just start playing this thing right away.
Okay. So just looking down at the green controller section, those are kind of commonly used MIDI controllers that you can map again to parameters, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some of those we built in, like key tracking on filter. That's something that makes a lot of sense. So we put a control right next to the filter to give you access to that. Same with velocity up here on master gain. But if we want to use velocity to trigger some distortion, we can just drag and drop and easily assign that, set a range to it. So as I play a little bit harder, it's going to key in a bit more of that distortion. We also have a macro attached to that right now too. And you can do that with aftertouch. A bunch of these patches have aftertouch really carefully dialed in, so players who have a controller that's friendly to that can dig into some of those sounds as well.
So it sounds like there's actually quite a lot of emphasis on almost back to basics synthesis. Obviously we've got the spectral element of it, but you've really concentrated on the sort of core notion of synthesis, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the sounds that our users are telling us they're looking for get to that thing of give us just great sounds, and then let's see what we can do exploring the spectral filter, exploring the modulation possibilities that come out of it. And maybe there's a better illustration of stepping past that the fundamentals of synthesis and looking at what can happen when we take some more exotic samples and put them together. This is just sort of a simple patch. So this is a sound that's stepping outside of that synthesizer domain and really taking advantage of loading a bunch of different samples and then taking just certain elements from that. So we have a Dilruba. I think that's also called a Ezraj. It's an Indian bowed instrument. Arab Brahmin uses that. This is a Colegno cello hit where you're using the wood of the bow to play the cello and then a sort of abstract distortion element. And if we look in at what the spectral filter is doing here, we're using just a very small component of each of these sounds. So that's what we're getting out of the Dilruba. This is what we're using from the Colegno cello, just that attack.
Right.
And then this distortion element.
Oh, wow. What's that?
And when we put,
what's that? That sounds great.
That's another cello sample that we ran through a bunch of guitar pedals. And here, I'll remove the spectral selection so we can hear what the original sample was. So that's kind of a cool sound all on its own, but this sound designer decided they just needed this low-end component. And then when we put all 3 of these together, we get this sort of comprehensive sound. Which might be useful to someone doing some scoring who needs kind of an impact thing, but that's a sound that may be really difficult to put together with another platform. And this, we think it's pretty easy here with this sort of sample-based workflow. And then if the spectral filter is a great way to pull out new sounds out of sounds that you may already have in your sample library, you can just get a whole breadth of new, exciting sounds into your portfolio and sort of your palette that you can pull music out of.
So just to clarify, what can you put in there? What sound files can you drop in? What's the resolution? What's the...
Any WAV file or AIFF. So every sample that comes with this is a 24-bit WAV file. So that means it's about an 11 gig sample library. And they're all WAV files, so you can use them here in Iris 2. We've tailored the library to work well with Iris 2, but they're available to use in other samplers as well. We just wanted to give people access to all those different sounds. And those
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is it possible to kind of drop rhythmic elements like breakbeats and loops and stuff in there and process those in kind of interesting ways too?
Yeah, absolutely. This can be a lot of fun to just bring a break that you've had for many years, or is perhaps a sample that is very recognizable, and sort of pull out just an element of it. You could pull out just the kick drum and get access to that, or pull out just the snare pattern, with some artifacts surrounding it, but you can get this very cool rhythmic effect out of that. And we do see people using this just as sort of a drum processor sometimes, where they're not taking advantage of polyphony or anything of that sort. They just load in a drum loop and have the sequencer
sorry,
play.
I keep asking. I'm asking about sounds, but then I kind of lead you off in a direction. Let's have some more sounds.
Of course, yeah. Let me see. Let's pull you. Iris One, I think, was best known for making great pad sounds because they could sort of evolve. But we've packed this full of some new pad sounds that take advantage of the modulation system too.
I can see by the sample one that you're just using some of the low fundamental harmonics there, right?
Yeah, and that's just one of our sounds that we have in here. So this is, let's see, what is that? That's a Polymoog sample, I guess, the Vox Humana patch. And that's combined with trombone, with just some sort of, some partials just above the fundamental there. And then what else do we have in here? There's also this sort of vocal formant sample. But when you put all those together, they become something so much bigger. And then when you add some modulation, this is that Korg filter model we have. It can become very dynamic and something that you can really make music with. So even though the disparate parts sound a little bit abstract, the patch itself, I think, comes together nicely as a scoring thing or sort of a background to a song.
It's very interesting because when I was looking through some of the patches earlier, you look at one of the samples and you almost go, I can't hear that. What's it doing? And it's the ability to put these very subliminal harmonics in that. But when you blend them in, they really do change the character of a sound, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going for, and it's something that sound designers ask us for: is how can we get more of that subtle complexity? It's sort of like a chef might use very subtle flavors to really make something dynamic and have these layers that go beyond just the core sound,
One of the things that I was looking at when I was looking at the spec, I didn't get a chance to explore. Is it possible to dynamically modulate the harmonic selections or move the waves or in any way like that? So to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, the stuff on the spectrogram, we can't actually move around with the modulation effects. But there are still all these parameters in here, and we found lots of our users move to those traditional filter types that we have here in the master filter. And those were the ones they were really craving the modulation on, where they just want that envelope on cutoff or the resonance being able to move with the LFO, that kind of a thing. But it's something we're thinking about in the future is how can we take these individual filters and make them even more dynamic with those modulation effects.
I guess thinking about creating modulation effects that are effectively working in three-dimensional space is going to be quite a gnarly, thorny issue to try and sort out.
But I must say, we've seen some artists push this thing to incredible limits that we never imagined being possible. I'll see if I can replicate some of what they do. Just hovering over this, I can move this selection around in real time. Artist Scanner, he actually improvises with Iris live. Wow. So he'll play something. And then drag those things around in real time and get these crazy improvisational things going on, and bring this live performance element to Iris that we had never really considered when we were developing the first one. But we're so excited about it. And we love it when an artist takes our product and takes it somewhere we never even expected.
Has there been done anything with sort of CPU load and optimization, that thing? Because obviously something that's as deep as this is going to require a few cycles to actually kind of achieve its goal, yeah?
Yeah, and it's very powerful. I won't kid you, but especially with the modulation stuff, we're asking for a lot of math to happen quickly. But we spent probably the last 3 months of development focused on CPU optimization, and we found quite a bit of success. It was another thing we did while we were working on the effects, making sure that the distortion algorithms are top-notch and high quality at all times, but not to such a quality. We found one distortion algorithm that was employing, I'm probably misrepresenting this, but it was employing some math that NASA was using for very high-end stuff. And we were like, guys, it's distortion and it sounds great, but we don't necessarily need all that resolution. Can we back it off a little bit, grab a little bit of CPU efficiency, and make sure our users are able to use a few instances of this safely, and with all the other great instruments that our colleagues make in the field that also use a fair amount of power. So we just want it to be a practical tool that people can really use in sessions.
So I'm guessing we're looking here at the standalone version, yeah? I mean, is all the usual suspects when it comes to final release candidate?
Yeah, definitely. We find a lot of our users are putting this to task in Ableton and Logic, Pro Tools, definitely. And we're finding users who are moving to FL Studio, Bitwig. But we test extensively in all these different hosts to make sure we're performing at absolute highest quality in those. And then collaborating with those developers, we're on all the forums. So when we hit a snag or a problem, we're getting that worked out. So anybody can use this in any host.
And how about the VST sort of side of things, where you can actually per note modulation and pitch and stuff? Are you getting into that, or is that asking too much?
I'd actually have to check with the designers and the developers a bit too much. It's not a feature I've used too much on my own, but that's an exciting one. I'm going to have to look into that.
Okay, well, Brad, it's been a pleasure having you aboard. I guess the thing is now you've spent all this time with this. By rights, you get to pimp the product and tell us how much and where you can get it and all of those things. It's only fair.
Yeah, of course. So we have lots of great partners who we work with both in the UK and Europe, over to Japan. Time and Space distributes us there in the UK, and they get it out to a lot of dealers over there. But you can also just get it right on our website. And it's available for $199, which you'll have to help me with the conversion.
Yeah, about 125 maybe. I don't know. I'd have to check that. Something like it's 1.6-ish, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, but we did come down in price a bit. We wanted to make sure that it was accessible for all users, not just the pro film composers who are working every day, but the person who just wants to make music in their home and wants the best tools possible and the best sound possible. And it's just, there's only one product. It's Iris 2, and it comes with all the content. With Iris 1, you could buy individual content packs. We're skipping that. We just want to give everybody all the stuff so they can get started with it right away.
Ah, okay. And is there a sort of patch compatibility or upgrade path or that kind of thing?
Yeah, there is an upgrade path for all those Iris 1 users. We can get them in for $99. They'll get started. They'll get all the content. And then as they bring their Iris 1 patches into Iris 2, they'll open just fine. We are recommending that Iris 1 users keep their Iris 1 library in one place and then just copy it over to Iris 2 so they don't end up moving samples around or something and losing great music that they'd made in Iris 1. But yeah, you have to bring it in, and because the whole thing has been redesigned, it's going to sound a little bit different. And make modulation assignments in this new modulation section line up to the right places. We spent a lot of time making sure that all worked out. But with all these things, it just takes listening to it, because the sound designers and the musicians themselves know what it's supposed to sound like. So sure. Just doing that final stage of fine tuning.
Brilliant. Okay, Brad. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It'd be great if maybe you could just find one patch to fade us out, so we can fade to black, listening to the dulcet tones of Iris 2 as we leave this excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Sure. This is just one of the rhythmic patches. This would easily sync to your host, and just something very